Hey guys, second here. Oops. All right. So, how is everyone today? How are we doing? Or whatever it is we're doing. Yeah. Yeah. Whew. Whew. Saturday. Once more.
Oh, fuck.
Okay. Yeah, looks like everything's set here. Good. All right. Well, I already lost two of you. That was quick. Um. So the title alone is probably gonna make some people like go, I don't want to talk about that. What? How would anyone want to have a conversation on such a sad, terrible subject? Why? Why, Angst? Why would anyone do that? I don't know. Why not? You off. Not getting feedback audio. Looks like it's alright. It looks like it's alright. Yeah. Cool. Alright, welcome to those that aren't here. Welcome to those that watch this as a VOD. Whatever welcome means in this case. Let's see here. Quick catch-ups. Kill Bree that I'm taking. Bree needs to still making me feel funks, but it's probably gonna make me feel that way for like at least another week and a half until it adjusts. That's how a lot of new meds tend to be, especially with the ones that are being used for the old noggin. Outside of that, I guess. Oh yeah. Oh, well, I should have probably called it that. Huh? I forgot. You know what? I could still change it. It'll be kind of funny. But I guess I could change it to have something a little more, call it something more interesting. Because I forgot that was happening tomorrow. Okay. I got a better title for the stream. Let me update that. That's a better one. If you want to see it, I think you'd probably have to refresh or something. There we go. Very good. Yeah. So other news is I'm turning 40 tomorrow. So apparently I've been told it's a pretty big deal. I don't think it's going to change much for me. Just another year. Interesting though. I was playing some games the other day and just it really, really made me realize how much, like, even if it's not like a crazy amount, how much I slowed down as far as like having the same reflexes and stuff as I used to for games when I was like in my 20s. Like, my reaction time has significantly been affected by my age, even if it's just only 40. I feel like even then, like, there's like this little bit, this at that point where you know that when you were 22, you could have beaten that boss in half the tries or a quarter of the tries. And then you're just like, brain, no, make go fast as before, make go. So, yeah, So it's weird. It's weird. One of the things that I guess I didn't really like think about much having to adjust, especially as somebody that games a lot and things like that, and you know a variety of different kinds. And just noticing like, or thinking ahead of time about, wait, I'm gonna have to like lower my challenge threshold that I place upon myself for games, which is like really, it really irks me. It really bothers me. Um, I was attempting like a little bit of a challenge yesterday for me in a certain game, and like I know I could have done it when I was in my 20s, early 20s for sure. Like I could have done it. I would have completed this like challenge I was comfortable with. Now I'm going to have to like lower my standard slightly. Well, maybe a decent little chunk, noticeable chunk, because yeah, it has an impact. In not a fan, not a fan of that part. I get like body get old, make hurt, you know, less things, you know, food doesn't digest as it, you know, as easily as it did in my 20s. A couple different things. I can manage that, but the one thing that bugs me um, is that it had an impact, even if it was only noticeable to me, probably, on my reaction time in the games I play. Like my brain is going react now in my body. It's just not reacting as quickly as I think about reacting. So that part sucks. I do not like that. Maybe I just need more. I need more brain food. Take more vitamins. Some shit. I'm gonna blame it on the meds, not my age. How about that? It's the meds. That's right. Back when I was in my 20s and super extra depressed and super anxious all the time, and I wasn't on my meds, I used to game better. But now that I'm not those things as much, it affected my gaming. Worth? Worth? Yes, it is worth, if it is in fact the meds, but I think it's just a combination of age and maybe meds. I don't know. So the subject of today is not really a pleasant, and some of you may already know what the question was. And some of you might have thought, like, why the fuck is Angst asking this question? It kind of came out of nowhere, kind of out of left field, right? Why is he asking the Zoids their opinion on euthanasia? No, don't worry. I'm not gonna put myself down quite yet. So, for those of you excited about that, that's not what I'll be discussing today. No, I just, it was more of a tangential thing I was thinking about a lot, in regards to like definitions of words, how they're approached, how they're put forward in everyday society. Hold on. All right, sorry, my oldest daughter had to get something in here. Um, the reason the subject of euthanasia has been coming up in my mind a lot is because I've been reading while listening, while I work, to this book called Neurotribes. I'm really bad with author names. It'd be stupid for me not to actually state it. It's kind of older. It's been out for quite a few years now. I think it came out in Oh, by the way, I forgot. Those videos at the beginning that I played when I was just kind of starting up the stream, that I'm gonna post the links to those. One of them is it's a Dream Dance loop. I think the original animation was by a YouTuber called Cheese 2. But they did a loop with a cool song, and then the other one, but the loop was done by a guy named Twisted Sense, and the other one was a loop of a video game little cutscene thing. It's a game called Psychopomp. If you haven't played it, you really should. It's free and it's on Steam, and it's weird, and I like it a lot. Um, anyway, so Neurotribes is this book that was written by a guy named there you go, Steve Silberman. He was a journalist, and he basically did like this pretty deep dive into like historic, scientific, advocacy advocacy based ideas, and as they like progressed, they developed regarding neurodivergence and stuff like that. The book itself came out like in 2015, and it mostly focuses on autism and how the term neurodiversity came to be. Obviously, it's something that nowadays is incredibly popular. You're probably wondering, what does this have to do with euthanasia? And some of you probably already guessed what it has to do with euthanasia. And one of the sections in the book, it really got to me. It was like fucking with my head for a while, even though it's one of those like, well, of course that's what people do or whatever. And I was kind of aware of this sort of stuff, obviously, because I mean, I didn't go to school for history for nothing, but it was an interesting insight into Asperger, and his work with what he called little professors, um, which is what he referred to a lot of his kind of Aspie kids and stuff. Now, the definition of what was Asperger's, and then eventually, they termed high functioning autism, and then they later termed, tier, was it level 1 autism, so on and so forth. During his time and during the time in which he was doing his work and studies and everything else, he was basically living in, well, he was born and lived in Germany, and during his, tenure, he essentially became, or was a part, technically, of the Nazi Party. And, but pretty much like anybody living in Germany, unless they escaped the country, was being dragged into, well, that party, one way or another, right? Good on those that got out of there before. They had to be, associated with such things. But in any case, he had a lot of these autistic kids and everything, and he was one of the first people to notice this kind of idea of, oh, look, autistic kids, or these autistic children, or autistic psychopaths, I think they use the word. They display all these like talents, capabilities. No, it's not the 18th for me yet. No. Yes, the 18th is my birthday, but it's not quite that yet. And what was I saying? Oh yeah, he was one of the earliest to notice that, like, oh, look, these kids have, like, obviously they're like socially, according, their words, but they were socially our word and everything else. But he noticed that they were like, they excelled in a variety of other ways, especially at the ages they were. They were, he was one of the first to write down that these autistic children were well-spoken, intelligent, very mature in many, many ways, immature in others, very aware of certain things, very conscientious of certain things, but not conscientious at all of other things. And hence, he titled them as little professors. And so when, and this is like a section in the Neurotribes book that, I think it's chapter 3, that goes into like this, like, pretty deep for something that's just kind of a cursory look into it. And he, the author Stephen Lieberman, I already forgot his name. The author goes into how the process in which the euthanizing of mentally disabled people, as they call it, term, and it was kind of a catch-all term for like a lot of things. Defective people, socially defective people, things like that. How the process of euthanizing them began, and the kind of rationalizations that were developed within the Nazi regime, party, and societal structure that was being created. And what was interesting is that Asperger, obviously, he gets a lot of flack for technically have become, being a part of the Nazi party because he was in Germany and he's, and at a certain point who wasn't. He had tried to, and I'm not saying this guy's without faults, that's for sure, a lot of faults, but he had tried to basically save, to some degree, in this kind of weird way, some of these kids that were basically gonna eventually be targeted for this stuff, or this kind of societal euthanasia of the unfit for society. And he basically used like, oh hey, why don't we they're worth keeping around because they have these skills that we could essentially exploit. So we don't have to do this, right? And that's kind of the language, regardless of his some of his ethical dilemmas with this idea, right? Because he had grown very fond of many of these like autistic kids that he essentially was, taking care of, and he knew that trying to appeal to like their people's humanity, to the Nazi humanity, was not going to work. So the idea was that he tried to be like, no, these are useful people because we can use them for like this reason and that reason, and they're really smart and they can do this. And unfortunately, it didn't quite. It was the only way he could package it so that it wouldn't put him on the crosshairs. And on top of that, he was a pretty eccentric guy himself. So there's some people that think that Asperger himself would have had Asperger's of some certain kind. And so I guess I was just going through that chapter and I just started thinking about like, that's so like, it's such a strange thing to think about, right? And I get it, like a lot of people were fucking killed for a variety of reasons. My brown skin would have probably been enough in a period such as that in a place like Germany, but it's strange to think, not strange, but it's interesting to think that people were essentially being euthanized for their inability to function under what was a very strict sense of neurotypical society in Germany. Like a fascistic neurotypicality, or normative cognitive enforcement, is what's interesting to me and horrifying. And it's just been and also I started thinking about the word euthanasia, how it was improperly used, right? Obviously, even today they'll say like, that's not euthanasia, that's just murder. But how the term itself can be bent and rationalized in different ways. Societal suffering, right? So that was kind of the reasoning. Oh, this causes society to suffer. So, and it's better to be put down than to live a life in which you are not productive to the world. It was like a literal belief, right? This wasn't even prior to Nazi takeover of Germany, or Nazi party takeover of Germany. Prior to all that, there was already a lot of this stuff going around in the States, various parts of Europe. Just blatant ideas that if you are not productive to the society in which you inhabit, you're better off dead because you're costing tax money and things like that. And this was like, this wasn't like a fringe idea. This was like less than 100 years ago. This was kind of like Yeah, that makes sense. I believe it was Asperger that did like a questionnaire regarding the euthanizing of like, uh, I believe it was children with Down syndrome, and the idea was, like they were just asking like parents, like, what would you do? Like, would you allow the state to like, you know, uh, what's the word? Shorten the life. I think that was the term they used of their children, were they to have this or that condition. And what was insane to me was that and sorry if it's blackpilling or whatever, that a lot of the responses to this kind of survey were, it's fine, but I'd prefer if you didn't ask me and just did it. So some of these parents they were okay with this state euthanizing of their kids as long as they weren't asked whether they had to do it or not. If they were just told it had to be done. So so it was this idea like, oh yeah, I'm fine with it, but I prefer, it's not my fault. I want you to make me feel like it wasn't my fault that you made me. It's like, man, it's grim. It's really, really grim. Yeah, what a cool birthday subject, I know. So, it dawned on me, it was just interesting to me, like, that even if you qualified in every way, like physically, right? Because they were throwing on the chopping block people that were like, legless and crippled and all kinds of stuff, right? But even if like your your body was just like fully intact, and you were Aryan, and blue eyes, white skin, all that good stuff, in Germany, if your behavior wasn't normative, and the nature of your thinking was not neurotypical, motivated by eccentric, idiosyncratic, schizo or autistic thinking, you were also put on the chopping block. And oftentimes, people constantly bring this up when it comes to like, especially when it comes to like race stuff and everything. They always bring up like historic, institutional consequences of like a certain, various groups of people in the present day and how it had an impact, right? And it's just it's interesting that conversation. And I'm not saying it has to be had, and I'm not saying there has to be some kind of like whole. I'm not, me. I'm not a big fan of like being like, I'm a victim. Oh, my society did this. But it's just interesting how that's not really one of those common conversations. Like, they were literally like euthanizing neurodivergent people, and there was conversations all over the world about how neurodivergent people, what we call neurodivergent people now in many ways, should be euthanized. And the idea of we should be able to determine as early as possible if a child will be like this, so that we could euthanize them. I know the amount of babies and children that were euthanized by the Nazis was in the thousands, right? And I know some people, it's like, well, that's not that the number's not that high. And I'm like, yeah, but how much of the population was like autistic or things of that nature? How much of the population, what percentage of the population really? So when you think about that number, it's pretty significant. And then I just started kind of thinking about like, oh, how this stuff doesn't, like, these ideas aren't really like every time they talk about the Nazis killing. It's always handicapped disabled people, handicapped disabled people, handicapped disabled people. Like that's what they always put. They put the normal, understood stuff. The basically the. I'm not going to get into everything, but you know what I'm saying. The conventional stuff, the Holocaust, everything else. And there's always a blurb that says handicapped and disabled people. And it just makes me kind of think, like, how many of these handicapped and disabled people weren't really disabled or handicapped by what would be a more modern standard? And why is that language still kind of being used? It's just so strange in, like, the historical literature. And I don't know, I'm just being a schizo, just thinking about that sort of stuff, and it's been rattling around my head for a bit. Like, someone like me would have been like, I would have either had to have hidden how I think and the questions I have, even if I had been, perfectly Aryan. I'm somebody that would have been probably put to the wall, if not because I'm insane, or I would be considered, a psychopath, or maybe I would be considered a political dissident, or something of that nature. It's interesting. I guess it's a way to meditate on being able to do certain things and appreciate them to a certain degree. But it also is it's a matter of sort of thinking about why it is that cognitive differences are that much more difficult for the average person to wrap their head around. It's too different, right? It's too different. Anyway, I had asked. I really went off there. Sorry. I had more to say, but I don't know. My brain's a bit scrambled. But anyway, read Neurotribes. Neurotribes, good book, very good book. Talks not just about that. Talks about all sorts of different things. It is a little bit outdated since it's from 2015. Some of the ideas in there are not like super bad or anything, but they are like more developed in 2024. But nonetheless, it was a really, really good starting point. And I think the book itself, it became a bestseller in various circles, but I think the book itself is probably one of the reasons why the term neurodiversity is used so commonly today. Or other terms like, well, that's what's interesting too. Like, I don't even think that the term, I believe the term high functioning autism was never actually like a medical term. It's rarely used in any kind of medical setting. But I'm gonna go off into different tangents. The question I had asked didn't have to do directly with any of that, all that stuff, right? I just wanted to know what the schizoid idea, or their, philosophical positions or thoughts on the euthanasia itself, and I wanted to kind of just get that perspective. And I'm curious to how nuanced and interesting some of those perspectives might be, because as you well know, I already think schizoids are made up of a combination of a bunch of different schizos and autists, and I'd like to hear what their perspective on this topic itself is, as well as or their, no. But in any case, so yeah, the question I had put forward was this one. I said, what are your thoughts on euthanasia? What are your philosophical positions on the matter? Just curious to what Zoid's thought on, I repeat myself. That's silly, no matter. And let me go ahead and undeafen myself. Hey there, Shadow.
Morning.
Yeah. So like I guess like if you heard me rambling, it's just that's how like that's what
I did.
my brain will do for like a week or a week and a half. Like it'll get stuck on this idea and then like continue unraveling it in different ways and connecting it to different things and then thinking about like, you know, all the tangential things that could be associated. Many of which I didn't even bring up yet or haven't remembered to bring up because there's so many that will pop in my head. But yeah, it's a really strange thing to know that such a thing happened to people in some respects like ourselves, but because of my approach to a lot of these things, I don't obviously like I don't have this like need or want to be like, oh, this happened to like I don't have this my people type of sentiment as strongly, obviously, and so it's a weird thought. It's a weird thought. And I don't know why it impacts me more than or it, you know, pops out at me more in my mind than say if it was like, I don't know, like the systematic killing of people of my race or people of my religion or people of my like, even if I had those other associations that were, you know, connected to such things. The one about cognition in itself being used as a means to, they literally would put an X or an O next to children and babies that displayed a lack of what they believe to be proper behavior and reaction time to various stimuli and things like that.
Do you really not understand why you connect more to that than others?
No, I can imagine in a variety of ways, but I don't like. Maybe it's because of the work I do. Maybe it's because the thought I put into it. But like, why is this such a? I mean, for me, I think it has more to do with like.
Well, there's two
Invisible.
things, right? There's identity, and there's also the people you meet that you actually connect with.
Yeah.
Those are the two things that pop out to me the most, right? Because when you talk about, when I imagine you think of yourself as who you are, you don't think of yourself as all these other factors that you explained earlier. You think about the cognition. You think about that's my defining feature.
Yeah. It's my defining feature. I mean, my cognition is probably one of the most important things, and one of the most important things to any schizoid. As far as like their inner world, their thoughts, their inner experience, and it's obviously going to be directly tied to their inner experience not matching up very well with the outer experience.
Like, obviously, you wouldn't relate to something that you could just easily throw away and not care about. Like, for example, skin color.
Yeah.
Like, I understand skin color affects how you live life, but for the most part, I'd imagine a lot of schizoids could
they don't give
not
a shit
really
about
care
their
if their
race
skin
or
color
nationality.
changed. Like, if my skin color changed, I don't really think I would care too much, like, as I am now.
Yeah, same.
Take it or leave it, you know?
Yeah.
But I wouldn't want to change my cognition.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe it has something to do with that. But yeah. And then it also made me start thinking about how words are and definitions are stretched for the rationalizing of evil. And the evil of rationalization is always something that's struck me as really valuable to think about.
Well, I wouldn't say rationalization itself is evil.
No, but there is evil that can be done with it. It can be used. It can be a
done with
tool.
anything.
It could be,
point?
yeah. I don't know about anything. Rationalization
Name
is
name one thing that can't be used for evil.
Like, okay, like, are you talking about like an idea, or like I mean, like a pumpkin? You can use it for evil if like you kill people with pumpkins or like drop pumpkins on them. Like, what do you mean?
So you said the evil of rationalization.
No,
I didn't like the way that was
yeah,
phrased.
you're right, right. The evil use of rationalization is like, but it's also like one of the most dangerous tools humanity has as its
Are
disposal.
you trying
As
to link this to the emphasis on rationalization in like Western culture and how easily
no,
that's
no, no, I'm not
manipulated?
talking about logic and utilitarian positioning. No, I'm talking about the human ability to rationalize evil acts, with as long as permission is given to do so.
Okay,
And
just as an abstract.
yeah, yeah, and then how a single word can convince a population that they're doing something merciful when it is in fact very, very evil. Um, and
Does it really convince them though?
well, yeah, it sure does because
Well, my
because they
point
were
with
well,
that is, does
yeah,
it convince them that they're right, or
yeah.
does it just let them tolerate it?
No, it did. Well, it depends. If you're talking about the parents that were doing these surveys about like how they were like, "Oh yeah, just go ahead and euthanize my Down syndrome kid. Just don't make me choose. Just do it."
But I'm sure that if they would ask their heart of hearts, they would understand that that's morally bad, but they
I
would
don't
cover
know.
it up with a lie.
I don't know. I don't think so. I,
That's my opinion.
I really do think that people can do this and feel absolutely little to no guilt and feel actually relief, if not
Not always.
righteousness.
I think you're right in some cases, and I don't know the percentage of those cases, but
I mean,
if you were to
people
ask a
are.
parent if it's right to euthanize their child, I don't think any parent would say yes unless they have some other abstract goal.
Yeah, I don't know,
Like
man.
in isolation, I don't think that's ever a yes.
People are like I sometimes I get like I don't know. Like I just think
You'd
about
have to
like
include like religion or some other
yeah,
frame
I
for
know, but
this.
that's what I'm saying. Those are all rationalizations, right? People use religion all the time to murder each other.
But that's
Um,
not a rational. That okay? Here's the problem though, because I understand why you say it's rationalization,
yeah, they're
but
rationalizing it in their mind as to why
if
it's
that's
correct,
that
right?
like if you use a logical argument,
Yeah.
you have to base it in logic.
No, that
I,
but
I don't think
rationalization
basing it.
isn't always like when somebody says
I
you
guess.
rationalize something, that means you convince yourself that of a position, or you convince yourself, or you basically like I could rationalize my hatred of I don't know humans or something like people. Well, like I could rationalize it. Doesn't make
Can
it.
you?
Well, yeah, no, no, you could rationalize it in your mind. It doesn't make it logical and consistent. People
Oh, well,
rationalize things all the time without them
it was
being
me being
logical and
autistic
consistent.
and being like, "Are you sure you could rationalize to yourself about this thing?"
Yeah, no, no, no. I couldn't. I couldn't. But there's plenty of people that could do this process very easily, and they do it constantly and all the time. And that includes the rationalizing of acts that are fucking evil. Um, and they can do so well. They do it so well that they will literally be able to sleep at night. That's kind of a terrifying notion.
Well, play devil's advocate here. I'm glad that I have the ability to do that because I, knowing myself, would have all these morally and ethically demanding issues that, or challenging dilemmas that would
Mhm.
happen in my life. And if I weren't able to have that rationalization cope, I wouldn't be able to go through with them. And it would be one of those dilemmas where not making a choice or
Yeah.
trying to take the high road would ultimately be worse,
No, no,
practically
I'm
wise.
not. I'm not
Right?
saying that
So,
using it to cope is all bad all the time. I'm just talking about like the extent in which a human being can do it, and in order to like the extent in which it can be done, where you can get a word like euthanasia, You
On one hand, you can have a
read
soldier that can actually sleep at night after fighting for their country. On the other hand, you can justify murder and slaughter, right? So it can understand what you mean.
yeah, in that sense, absolutely, right? Like, yeah, there's plenty of people that have been in wars that can sleep at night, and then there's the ones that can't. Um, for some, that rationalization was cope. For others, that rationalization was enough. Um, for some, they one day wake up realizing it was cope, and they feel nothing but guilt and horror. Others, don't shed a tear. So, oh man, I had this thought that popped into my head about what's. Oh yeah, yeah. So another crazy thought I had about this subject about euthanasia. I gotta really read the submissions, but on euthanasia and how the word was used in the chapter in the book talking about Nazi Germany, um, was how even like it kind of weirds me out. Like even the people, let's just say people that were dissidents within Germany, they were they were technically part of the Nazi Party. They were very Aryan, very German, and they, were doing things to help out or help people escape from their country that were either, Jewish or the wrong ethnicity or whatever. And they were doing this, obviously at risk of their own lives. At, at best, lifelong imprisonment. And but those same people would probably be still down for the euthanizing of the disabled and handicapped.
Euthanasia as a concept is a struggle for me because I need to have very individualistic cases. I don't think it's a flat out no, never, because if
No, it's
I
absurd.
could make a black and white answer to any situation, then
Yeah, it's absurd.
chances are I'm coping myself.
Yeah. No, yeah. I just
But
don't. Yeah.
I wouldn't even be able to have any black and white criteria where it's even always applicable. I'd have to do very, very specific. I'd have to basically analyze each case independently on its own.
Yeah, no, I get it. I guess it's just I think it's always that same problem that's in my head about like the very narrow set and very lacking ability for the neurotypical person to metacognize. And even the best, most well-intentioned one would still make horrific decisions and rationalizations. Like, and that's kind of what I mean, right? Like somebody that was risking their lives to get, uh, Jewish people out of Germany would still not lift a finger for an autistic child, which they might just deem a detriment or a tax burden on society.
I mean, there's a lot of otherism that happens just because of the inability to connect. That's kind of
Yeah,
an issue for the double empathy with autism in general.
yeah, but
Double empathy isn't necessarily autistic uh,
yeah,
exclusive.
no, I know, but I think you'd be pressed to find a lot of autistic people that would be on board any form of forced euthanasia or eugenics based ideas of specific kinds like that.
Well, how many autists do you know, right?
I guess
Like that.
so, but
That's kind of a bold statement.
I would love to see that more. Like I would love to see that. I'd like to hear those opinions.
It's a very bold and broad, sweeping statement.
Yeah, I know it is. But like it just based on my understanding of how the thinking and the information is generally discussed and processed, I can't see why they would ever come to that conclusion if without essentially falling into the trappings of a bunch of what do you call it? A bunch of fallacies. Like it's just wrought with fallacies, and I feel like autistic people are fallacy detectors a lot of the time, not fallacy creators. Um, yeah,
Not necessarily. If they get, and they can be, emotionally driven on a subject, like usually there's a sense of moral justice that's enhanced in someone who's autistic
yeah,
on an average,
yeah,
and they're more likely to detect inconsistencies in logic, but
yes,
they are also far more likely and vulnerable to being carried by their emotions than the average person. So that's not to say, like, in a clear state of mind, you might be right on an average, but how often would they be carried by their emotions to be driven into these fallacies when they otherwise wouldn't be in a clear state of mind?
yeah. The when I've seen, whether it's online or debates or discussions or online on whatever, um, when I've seen a lot of autistic people or people that seemingly are get like really riled up, really upset, it's usually because there seems to be this ignoring of those things. It's usually
Well, it can
because,
be ignoring of a lot of things. It doesn't have to be
but the
those.
but the ignoring of, like, oh wait, this is fallacious or this is not factual. You have like, and like that's why usually I feel like a lot of autistic people are usually really bad at rhetoric. Um, they're not always the best rhetoricians because they don't see the purpose of playing those rhetoric based games. They look so unintuitive. Um, and when rhetoric is used and it's being,
Because rhetoric is usually used for a different game than the autist usually cares about.
yeah, that's what I'm
I'll
saying.
say that.
It's a game. It's a different game. And then I've seen like
It's
autistic
not a game
individuals
without a
get
prize,
really
but it is a
pissed.
different game.
They get pissed when those sorts of things are being placed on the pedestal of importance, and say something like a debate or a discussion or things like that. Like there's a lot of autistic people that love debating and they're just fine debating, but the moment a lot of that sort of stuff happens, that's when I feel like the emotions start flying more, and the frustration and the it's just interesting. I don't know why I went off on that, but let me read some of these before I fucking forget. Yeah, my stupid old brain.
It's already been an hour into the stream. Fuck.
Yeah, I know.
I'm just as bad of a yapper as you are.
Oh, we're both terrible. Um, let me see here. Let me read some of these. I don't have a whole lot, but there is a few. Um, I'm just wondering. I got a few in a. There was one that looked long, but I haven't. Like I said, I don't read them. I just kind of look over to see how many got dropped in, and one of them was a significant in volume, so I have to get through these. Let's see here. First one, Dear Angst, euthanasia as a subject is stupid, but yeah, if they're terminally ill and in a lot of pain, etc., I want to dip out a bit early. And want to dip out a bit early. Let them. Though I might not let the state do it. Just have a friend be legally allowed to assist, or possibly a doctor. Um, let's see here, Dear Angst. I believe humans should have the right to end their own life. Nobody should be forced to live against their will, and nobody else should be able to decide whether you live or die except you. If we have the right to decide an animal has suffered enough and euthanize it, we should be able to do the same to make choice for ourselves. I would actually like to see the criteria for voluntary euthanasia extended. In my country, it's only available if you have a terminal illness that is expected to cause death within 6 months. I have a disease that causes unbearable physical suffering and can last for decades. Driving Many suffer to suicide, yet it isn't considered terminal, and so it is eligible. In a society where people's basic needs, such as housing and healthcare, are increasingly not met, it's cruel and borderline torture to force people to live, especially if they already have torturous health issues. Dear Angst, euthanasia is a human right and should be provided free to anyone who wants it. Moreover, it should be one of the fun ways to die, such as opioid overdose. Dear Angst, hi Angst, here's my answer for your live stream question. You're probably referring to euthanasia for people, and I know it's supposed to be a very taboo topic. Personally, and I should have specified, but it would have been interesting to hear just in general. Personally, I don't see any problems with it as long as the person being euthanized is doing it of their own free will. See, that was the big difference, right? When I was talking about the historical use of the word euthanasia in eugenic circles, especially in Nazi Germany, there was no consent there. That was not euthanasia. Personally, I don't see any problems with it. Should interfere. Okay, here we go. If this is the case, no one should interfere in the process, since the person wants to end their life, and they will do it in this way or just find another option. There's an exception for me, at least. If I ever become a vegetable or a quadriplegic, I would want for my family to give a go-ahead for assisted suicide or just throw me off a bridge. I can't imagine living life like that, not being in control of my own body. See here, dear Angst, there should be euthanasia on demand for all. so that only the societies that manage to provide a life worth existing for get to not die out. Wow, that's interesting. Wow, that's an interesting position. That got meta. So if the conditions that the society creates makes a large swaths of the population want to euthanize themselves, then that society is not worthy of existing, and it'll force the hand of that society or that state or whatever, because people would be dying in droves. That's interesting. Pretty wild. But I mean, in all honesty, like, if that was a good enough parameter, then there's plenty of societies that should really rethink themselves, considering the amount of people that will illegally euthanize themselves for a variety of reasons. Many times institutional. Okay, let me see here. Yeah, but I think. Do you think if like an opioid overdose, or like a painless, if not euphoric suicide, was readily available by your local practitioner, do you think there would be like a huge increase in backflipping? Like,
What do you mean by that question?
Like, if like the medical community said, "Oh yeah, we'll euthanize anybody for whatever," like, they didn't even have to tell us why. We'll just do it, and we'll do it in the most painless way possible. And if anything, you'll be just super high and die happy, or something crazy like that. And do you think the number of people that would just go make that choice impulsively would just skyrocket? Because now it's like there's this like painless option.
In today's age, yes, absolutely, without a question. I don't even know why you're asking me this. Kind of like obvious.
Yeah. All right. I kind of thought it was obvious too. I just wanted to hear your thought. But
I don't think it would have been such a huge increase with older generations, like pre-internet, just because I think what attributes people to have these low like moods or hopes for society as at large is paradoxically the internet, open access to the world, information on a world scale.
Yeah.
I think we're still trying to adapt to that as a global species.
Yeah,
because
it's
it's only been fucking like what, 40 years that we've had internet.
Yeah,
30, really?
like if I didn't have access before I had access to the internet, I wouldn't have been, bombarded on, say, somewhere like Quora or Reddit, or even some post somewhere of like, oh look, this teacher in this country was, here's pictures of them, after they got smashed in with rocks and lit on fire
Yeah, I'm sure even the news was
because
his
of
own
heresy or something.
radio, and then eventually television was its own like breakthroughs for people learning
Oh
more
no,
about
that
the world.
I read a whole book on the Vietnam War and television broadcast and news broadcasts. Like, it was the Vietnam War was one of um the first times that you had more guerrilla journalism and stuff. So it was one of the first times you were getting like raw footage and like more graphic, less propaganda controlled information and footage of like the horrors of war.
Yeah, I've
And
heard that from various people as
yeah,
well.
and so that had a significant impact on how not even just Americans,
Americans
but
viewed
just
war.
human society was viewing war in this more raw fashion. And yeah, like that caused a certain sort of paradigm shift.
I think, yeah, but
Because
I
of
think
technology. So
the exposure to information leads people to believe they need to have all this information in
yeah.
order to live. Like, I get told pretty often by usually family and maybe a couple of coworkers here and there that it's an odd take for me to say I don't watch the news, because it's usually met with people that say, but you should probably watch it just so you know what's happening in the world.
hmm
Which, to me, I just disagree with, to be honest. Like, I think there is value in knowing that, but if I don't do anything with that information and it's only burdening me with the knowledge
Yeah.
without me, like, if I'm not gonna do anything anyway and I know what's happening, what does that do to me? It makes my life, like, worse, because now I'm burdened with the knowledge of suffering. It's not that I'm hiding myself from suffering, it's there is no practical benefit to me knowing about it. And I'm talking as me as an individual.
Yeah,
There are
yeah,
people
yeah.
where it does
No.
benefit, but then those would be the people that would watch the understand this information, because they would be the ones that actually care about it. So why is the vast majority of people who I don't believe would be practical problem solvers in these scenarios,
but
why does it matter for them?
you like to be aware of suffering that is relevant to you, and
Yes,
you
that
could
would
do
matter.
something about. That's why you're more interested in, say, suffering that's within your purview of being able to have any kind of uh impact on, right? Like for example, like, you're not going to watch a bunch of news on the homeless epidemic, but you will likely, if given the opportunity, like, just be like, oh, here's here's a few bucks, homeless guy, or here's this, like, oh, here's this, or oh, that guy looks like not okay, I should probably say something, or maybe call 911 because he looks like he's dying or something. Like, it's just kind of big. So it's for you, kind of comes down to, like, can I actually do something about it? If I cannot, it does not serve me or anyone any purpose, including the person suffering. Huh. That's interesting. I don't really think that way, but yeah, it's interesting, and I could see that for sure.
The issue with that is I don't think you should abolish all sources of information. I don't even think anything should be done. I think I was just expressing my
Yeah.
uh, perspective of people's mental health going down in conjunction or in comparison to previous years,
Yeah.
because the influx of information.
And the availability of it. It's interesting. And various people having differing levels of like psychological tenacity.
I mean, the economy is a fluctuating factor that can always be up and down. So I think what, on like a more meta scale of what attributes the what would be an increase of people taking that opiate or whatever you just described to euthanize themselves. I think on a more meta scale, you can attribute that to the availability of knowledge.
Huh. It's so funny because, like,
It's overwhelming.
as a single individual, yeah, but it's crazy how humans can't band together with that same knowledge and do something about it. Because one cannot, many can.
I think they can. We're just still adapting to it. Because for many people, the internet isn't even 30 years old for many people because the access to the internet has.
Do you think if generations continue with this much access to information, that like society or culturally will eventually be able to do something about it because it'll force people? I kind of see what you mean, only because I see some of this stuff happening. And it's a really poor example. It's a really stupid example, but like, even my wife brings it up because she'll be fucking around and looking at some thing that's being discussed a lot on something like TikTok or whatever. And yeah, there's a lot of brain rot going on in there, but there'll be like,
yeah, there's also a lot of not I've heard recently.
Yeah, but there'll be like a situation in which some really awful thing occurred, and there is evidence that it occurred, and then it's not just like, oh, getting on a bandwagon of like, let's go after this person because it makes me feel good. It's like legitimate, like, sort of like actionable things that sometimes they do. It's not just like lip service. Like they're actually taking.
We're getting recreationally angry.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Like, for example, there was there was something that would have just been a news story. But then that would have just been in and out. But because it went viral or whatever on TikTok, actionable things, not necessarily good things, some good, some not so good, things happen because of it. Like, one thing was there was a video of it was a mom and their autistic kid were crossing the street. A crosswalk. They were going across crosswalk, and like the kid was just, stimming and just kind of like moving his arms around a bit, and he would be, I guess, more as somebody might term what's it called, more profoundly autistic or whatever, and he damaged the hood ornament of this guy's car as he walked by it, and obviously, like, in my mind, I go, well, yeah, I mean, that's the responsibility of the parent. If for some reason, like, the child can't control their
I mean, that sounds like a freak accident, though. Because
or it could have been a freak accident, but nonetheless, right? The onus of the damage, if the person really wanted to, like, be like, hey, somebody has to pay for this, it would be on the parent to, unfortunately, have to deal with, right?
I mean, there's some nuance there, but I understand what you mean.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying, because it's like, whatever. I mean, like, if that happened, I wouldn't give a shit about a hood ornament, but some people do. I guess.
No, but I'm saying, like, the very type of the ornament and the way that was on the car can be gross negligence on the vehicle owner's part.
No, but it's like the kind, like BMWs, how they just have that thing sticking out, like it's always there. Every fucking one of them has it.
No, I have no idea.
Okay,
I don't know really.
But anyway, I guess this kid like damaged it, and the guy started screaming out the window, and then got out, and I think the sister started recording because he got out of his car, and then he went up to the mom and the kid. Oh, my dog. This girl. Okay, so yeah, so then they went up to it and they were yelling at the mom and the kid.
Your mic's doing the thing.
Oh, can you hear what's it doing? What's it doing?
It just whenever you come back.
Yeah. Okay.
It takes a few seconds.
All right. And then he fucking like slaps the autistic kid in the face. Like while the mom is holding him, like he just fucking hits him. And he goes,
Christ.
And then like he gets back in his car. And that would have been something that like would have been horrible, but technology made it readily available and visible to human beings. And so obviously it got on the news.
Yeah, I hope she got enough support to sue the fucking guy.
Well, I don't know
That's
about.
assault. That's
Well, yeah, that
literally
is
assault.
But the guy was, the license plate was gotten. The guy was recognized by, I guess, some people in the very community. The good things that happened were, I believe that guy was charged, so that's good. The bad things aren't great, but it's humans be doing humaning, is they went to the guy's house and started throwing shit at it and basically like socially shaming and blah blah blah, which so, and of course, this guy is just like in that community is now forever known as the autistic child slapper. And so, I mean, do with that information as you will, but
For what it's worth, I understand I'm not advocating for people to do that kind of vigilante.
well, yeah, the police actually had to like get there and make everyone disperse from the home because they were vandalizing it essentially.
But for what it's worth, on a different perspective, I'm glad that there was coverage of people shaming this sort of behavior, so that because that's now more understood, because there's a lot of parent behaviors that kind of pre-internet weren't really that great.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's more on the lines of, hey, now this is understood as socially bad. Even though, like, in isolation before internet, there was, like, okay. And we're like, oh, well, I guess they'll just parent how they want to.
Yeah, exactly.
So from a different perspective, I'm glad that there is accountability to these actions.
It reminds me of technology's ability to create the village dynamic. And it seems to be extending toward more and more things. And it's not just stuff like that, like people behaving badly. It's also companies, corporations, the highest classes and people in society, celebrities, various types of people that would have gotten a pass in the past are being reprimanded and shamed for toxic behaviors, which I find interesting too. Like, I don't follow this, but like I don't know, some of it just seems outrage for the sake of outrage, but some of it is like like celebrity or financial corruption, and then it's like, oh, look at this corrupt thing that's happening. It would have made it like on some Forbes article that some people interested in finance would have found out about it. But then when you got like some guy that does like a 1-minute blurb on this like really, really bad form of like corruption within some kind of state extension or a corporation, then a bunch of people get riled up, and then they start going like, fuck, insert corporation, they did this, and look, this same guy who brought it up and went viral, he dug up some more stuff about things they do, and now you have like 100,000 plus 200,000 people aware of it, and then all of them are just bombarding that company with negative feedback and association and so on and so forth. It's interesting what it can do. So maybe you're right. Maybe that's something that humanity will eventually be able to more carefully use and also implement in a more actionable and responsible way, but that's really optimistic.
I mean, we're only like 20 years of
I know,
the vast majority of people having internet.
Yeah, human beings. The question becomes, human beings, when given knowledge, have a history of doing a lot of terrible shit with it, and some definitely good shit. But knowledge in and of itself, as a whole, is something very new and newly available. And then the use of that knowledge and the knowledge to become common knowledge much faster, very quickly. Like, common knowledge becomes something far more vague and nebulous nowadays, because many things become common knowledge very quickly now. In a variety of spaces and stuff. But it goes beyond that, you know. Like it's not just the terminally online that are impacted by this. Hell no, it trickles into a variety of places. But anyway, let me read the next one because there's like two more, and this one's really very long. Okay, let's see here. Dear Angst, while I am personally in the camp of it depends, there is an interesting gray area where we define the idea of death. The prevailing model for death is the Harvard criterion, which stipulates that the death occurs when all three regions of the brain cease functioning. This is determined by a series of tests. This is to establish a reversibility, no response to stimuli, no respiration or spontaneous movement, no reflexes whatsoever, and perhaps more importantly, flat lines in the sorry, I can never say this word, electron which indicate no electrical activity in the whole of the brain. Before the invention of the electro, oh my god, I can't say it, cephalogram. The definition of death was very different. We can see effects of this imperfect perspective in the exhumation of coffins. They found evidence that some people were in a coma and not actually dead. They simply could not detect certain types of comas with the technologies of their time. Who's to say we fully understand death in the present? Will we invent a future technology that will allow us to detect life signs that are invisible to us in the present? Will we be able to revive people after death, even the cryonic people? This is best argument that I have had presented to me on this topic. I will probably not give original speaker the justice the presentation deserves. The primary basis of this point is the moral double effect, first used by Christian theologian Thomas Aquinas in the legal argument of self-defense in a situation where you are where you are a potential homicide victim. I am using a more modern version used by Joseph Mangan. Self-defense killing is justified if the given criteria are true. Oh, hold on one second. I'll keep reading, but I gotta lower the camera. That the action in and of itself and the very object be good, or at least indifferent. That the good effect and not the evil effect be intended. That the good effect be not produced by means of evil effect. That there be a proportionately grave reason for permitting the evil effect. This doctrine posits that, on occasion, it is morally acceptable to cause harm if it comes as a side effect of bringing about a good result. Self-defense is an action that seeks to preserve one's life. In that process, the aggressor may die, but that is never the intention, although it may be foreseeable. I don't know. Sometimes it is the intention. It depends on the person. Like I've seen plenty of instances in which people use excessive force. Given the situation. Taking this point and viewing its application as it pertains to a medical context, this principle makes euthanasia morally impermissible. In euthanasia, the goal may be to relieve the patient's pain, but it is done by inducing permanent harm. Death is not merely a foreseeable but unintended side effect of the action. It is the very means to achieve the original goal. Oh, that's interesting. But so okay, I could see the logic behind that, but yeah. First, consider a physician whose patient is suffering from chronic pain, injects a large morphine dose that results in death. In this case, the physician's actions have resulted in the patient's death, but the physician, oh my god, I can't speak all of a sudden, has not intended the patient's death, and death was not being used as a means for pain relief. Second, consider a physician who wishes to relieve the intense pain of a patient but plans to do so by mercy killing the patient with morphine. This case would be an example of euthanasia under the principles of double effect. It is not morally permissible because death has been intended as a means for pain relief. This assumes that death is a greater evil than the perpetuation of the patient's pain, but the point of the argument is the intention of the physician. If you are familiar with some of the foundational concept of USA's legal system, I am. A major point and important to all argument of permissibility is the concept of intent. Yeah, this is why many people from cultures with influence for Christianity have an aversion to the idea. Now we approach the zenith. Fundamentally, each person's opinion on this topic will depend on this question. Is it okay to choose the lesser of two evils, or should you bear the guilt of the lesser evil, and the more ethical choice being to abstain from choosing? I like this because it kind of puts forward that idea that like a lot of these a lot of this decision-making process might not necessarily follow, depending on your definition of words and the use of them, follow like logical consistency when it comes to something like euthanasia and how it's being. It's interesting. It's interesting, like about morality, how certain actions would be technically immoral but ethical. So something can be technically immoral but also ethical. It's interesting, especially if you have more rigid definitions of how such a thing is structured. Um,
Abstaining from choosing is a choice in and of itself. That's pretty much my only thing that I wanted to say about that.
yeah,
There is no walk away and cleanse your hands. Once you're in it, you're in it.
yeah. Like I saw a case of there was like a kid that was I forgot what year it was, but it was in the U.S. It was a kid. He had Down syndrome. He had a different condition that required surgery. The parents essentially, like, it was weird because essentially because the parents have the right to say my child will not have that surgery, it gave those parents the opportunity to legally euthanize their kid, because like there was an available means as to avoid or significantly increase the chances of that child's death not occurring, but the legal system at the time allowed them to basically say no, and then the child died of the condition that was possibly preventable. Um, so it was like, weird gray areas like that, and I guess it never got to the Supreme Court because the kid died before it did. Um, but yeah, it's that's where you get like into really strange territories of like being able to just basically have that much power over your child as to make the decision of no, I'm just gonna let, like, what's interesting is the kid might not want to die, obviously, but the parent could say no, my kid is dying because I refuse to allow this surgery to occur, and my rights over my child supersede the rights of a physician or the state when it comes to a elective surgery. It's so crazy. Like if your kid was like uh really sick and you just don't take him to the hospital, you might go to jail for like gross negligence or all kinds of other shit. But if you take him to the hospital and they say, "Oh, we can help him, but it requires this surgery," no.
If you're giving up the like, it really depends on the chance. But if we're going to assume the chance of the child dying is near guaranteed if they don't take this, and the parents refuse the surgery, I would take that as them refusing custody of the child themselves. Because if they're going to die, then you're effectively refusing to have any right over your child whatsoever because they'll be dead.
What was crazy?
So then the child should be taken away from them, and then the choice should be
the
made
kind of
again to
question.
people that would have it.
That's the kind of question that was being brought up at the time. There was even people that they were offering to take care of the child themselves and be like, if you don't want to deal with them, just give them to me. And it's still they probably had some kind of like belief system that thought, oh, it's better for this child to die than live out their life with Down syndrome.
Yeah, but then you'd be giving up your child effectively. If it's near guaranteed that they're gonna die, you're giving up the rights to your child.
Well, yeah, but that's so crazy too, right? Because if the same occurrence were to happen during even 60 years ago, it would have been a very different idea. It would be like, oh no, they're doing that child a favor. What kind of life is it to not be productive and have Down syndrome? It's just, it's something. It's something. Let me see here. I think I only have 2 left. This one. Let's see here. Dear Angst, I absolutely do not want to think about that. Okay. Fair enough. Dear Angst, I think euthanasia should maybe be available for terminal patients that can't end things for themselves. For everyone else, suicide is still an option, but euthanasia for everyone could easily make it too easy for people to make the decision that are only willing to do it for a temporary situation. Yeah, yeah, like that. I've heard that before. Like if there was like in I think it was Futurama, they had like suicide booths in the future, and like he would just put like essentially like a few bucks in there, and it would just zap you and just disintegrate you instantly. And it was just about like, oh, that's probably not good because there's probably plenty of situations in which a emotionally distraught human being or one that is like emotionally
Attack of the Child, Part 2, Electric Boogaloo.
oh, good night this time. Um, but yeah, yeah, it's yeah. How many people would just have like a really like how many people like myself and others that have had a lot of distress in certain periods of their life would just like make an impulsive decision that they couldn't take back, and ultimately damage a significant amount of people in their lives. Had they waited another day, and then things settled down, thoughts were processed a little further, or some kind of catastrophizing didn't culminate into anything realistic that actually occurs. So yeah, that's why I'm not really for the like anybody should just be able to do it anytime they want, like whenever, and have it really available. Like I don't know.
It's like the same thing as you want to offer, like, plenty of doctors would refuse surgeries. That's effectively the same.
Oh, you mean like if you were like, you go to your dentist and you're like, I want you to take all my teeth out, and they're like,
Yeah,
why? They're fine. Your teeth are good. They're healthy. I
they
just don't
have
want to have
they have the
teeth.
right to refuse
Yeah.
something, just as much as we have in the U.S. We have laws that if you are to go purchase a firearm, for example, you cannot do that the first day you choose to go get a
No, you
firearm.
can
There is
buy
a
it, but you
waiting
don't get
period.
it. You don't actually receive. I think you
Well,
pay
yeah,
for
but
it. You don't
there is a
receive
waiting
that. Yeah, there's a
period,
waiting period. Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
we already have restrictions on various aspects of things that are emotionally volatile or
Yeah.
could be emotionally
Well, that's
volatile
why in many
and life changing.
that's why in many cases the purchase of a firearm, um, especially in places where that kind of law exists, not every state has such things. Um, it's used as a means to prove premeditation and intent, right? So like if you if you buy a weapon and then it's like, oh, and then 8 days later they did the criminal act. It's like, wow, okay, this is really thought out. You really planned this. This was not like like impulse based situation. Here's the evidence of that. You waited 7 days to get the thing to do the thing. Um, huh. All right. So anyway, guys, I think that's the general gist of it for this one. It was more of just a ramble. I wanted to see what people thought. I wasn't surprised that the Zoids that did submit were just kind of like all, you know, and not because like, oh, they're just death happy or death trigger happy for that sort of stuff, but it makes sense though because the central preoccupation with like autonomy, and it's like this whole idea of like, who are you to tell me when I cannot exit this mortal coil. So I am in no way, shape, or form surprised I didn't really see any kind of moral or ethical argument against it. I didn't expect to, or even like even something kind of more middle of the ground. Most like some of them were just kind of like straight up like whenever, wherever, however, and it's just the schizoid, oftentimes the schizoid libertarian perspective on autonomy and existence and your ability to cease to be at your own volition. that I find interesting as well, along with all the other thoughts I had in my head that there's no way I could have like put into a single question that I said earlier. All right, well, thanks a lot, guys. I know this was like just a big old depresso one, but I thought it would be, here comes the full moon, someone euthanize me, please, stewards. Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're going to turn into a lycanthrope, then maybe that's reasonable. You don't want to go out.
There's so many people that would love to turn into a lycanthrope.
Yes, probably. Yeah, because then it's like,
Angst is one of them.
It's not my fault I murder all those people. I was the curse of the werewolf. I didn't know. Anyway, all right, guys. Thanks a lot for joining me. I'll think of something a little less horrible, kind of like the one person said. I refuse to think about this subject, which is really funny. But yeah, I'll talk to you guys on Tuesday more than likely, and I will be 40 then. So I don't know what that'll change. Maybe I'll get like suddenly have like a giant like mole around my head like magically.
No, your face will like instantly wrinkle up like a prune out of water, and your hair will just all turn gray.
Hey guys, yeah, that'd be cool. That would be cool.
Yeah,
if I
and you'll
woke
sound
up...
like that, but like you won't need to have put any effort into it.
Welcome to the Schizoid Angst Show. All right, guys. Talk later. And if you want to support
Also, start saying whippersnappers more often.
Whippersnappers. If you want to support me, please do so on Patreon, PayPal, all that kind of shit. And as usual, when day is dark, always remember, happy day.